I am so honored to moderate the conversation that is about to begin with three tremendous democracy activists. Let me welcome to the stage Jeffrey Ngo from Hong Kong, Leopoldo Lopez from Venezuela, and Corinne Kanimba from Rwanda. Please join me. Welcome to all of you. I am so delighted to have this time with you. We are going to try and get through a lot because the struggles facing democracy activists in each of your societies are similar in certain ways and in some ways very different. Let me start, if I may, Corinne, with you. Some of you, Jeffrey, for example, you've been a democracy activist since before you could vote, right? Working on campaigns in Hong Kong in a more open era. But Corinne, you came to this struggle from a personal family struggle, which was to get your father, Paul, out of his unjust imprisonment in Rwanda. Can you tell me a little bit about that journey from the particular to the mission that you advance today as spokesperson for the World Liberty Congress?
Yes, thank you, Tamara. And first, it's an honor to be here in front of everyone. So at first, the fight was for my father's life. He was kidnapped, he was tortured, he was unjustly detained by the Rwandan dictatorship just because he dared to speak the truth, he dared to criticize the regime, its abuses on human rights, and the actions it's committing in neighboring countries and in the Great Lakes region of Africa. And that led him to his kidnapping, and torture and imprisonment. And so when we found out that he was imprisoned, our focus became about bringing him home. My family and I knocked on every possible door. We called every government, every news network, every individual that was willing to listen and to lend their voices to the fight for his freedom. And as I was speaking to governments, as I was speaking to legal institutions, as I was speaking to other activists, I realized that my story, our family story, was not unique. There are countless other families who are going through this nightmare in silence and are also trying to shout as loudly as we were. Thankfully, my father was released, but the campaign for his release and that realization turned into a mission to speak out on behalf of other political prisoners around the world, a mission to shed light on transnational repression, a mission to expose the tactics of the regimes, of these authoritarian regimes, and to build a coalition of activists, of people who are pushing back against autocratic regimes in country and in exile. And so this is how I became part of the World Liberty Congress, by meeting these other individuals who are fighting for democratic change in their countries.
Thank you so much. You know, all three of you represent the continued demand and quest for democratic freedom in some of the toughest, most repressive places in the world. And this is the hardest edge of the work that we do. One consequence of the work that you do is that all of you now have to live in exile. That's an experience that no one would choose, especially those who have committed to fight for the future of their countries. So I'm wondering if you can just tell us a bit about that experience for you. Leopoldo, you ran for office, you wanted to serve your community, and you were forced to flee. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to my fellow panelists and to all of you. So after 7 years of imprisonment, I escaped Venezuela. I escaped prison, and then I escaped Venezuela, and I came into exile. I'm not the first, and I don't think I will be the last. And exile, in a way, is another form of imprisonment. If you dedicate your entire life to a cause, in my case, my country, I love my country, I breathe my country, I have a tattoo of my country in my leg, and being outside my country, it gave me a different challenge. And I think the most important thing, and I speak about this with my colleagues who are coming into exile, is to realize the first thing is that you're in exile. You're in exile. And this is a different perspective, and you need to reinvent yourself. So exile could be a way of just falling apart, of being resentful, of thinking that there is nothing else that you can do, or it can be an opportunity to figure out ways to reinvent yourself, your movement, your approach to this struggle. Today, the world is connected in a way that allows for a lot of things to be done. And we are hundreds of thousands of exiles, political exiles around the world. And we have been looking for ways to build the bridges between those who are in exile and those who are still on the ground, leading the resistance or working in the resistance. And I think the key to all of it is to continue the fight, to continue to move forward, to have purpose, to understand that it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in your country, you can be away from your country, but there are things that can be done. And you need to understand that there are different positions and different ways to contribute. Today, after Maduro stole the election in July 28th, we had an election in Venezuela. Maduro lost through a landslide. Edmundo González won by 70% of a vote, and he stole the election. And that has led to massive repression and a large wave of people going into exile. But it also, because of the massive repression, it led to rethinking and reorganizing the way in which we support the democratic movement internally. So a lot of the operational capacities that we had inside Venezuela, we had to move them outside Venezuela, and we had to engage in different ways. But I think that the most important approach is just to know that it's a different position to fight the same fight. You lose when you lose purpose. And dictatorships want people to lose hope. They want to break the hope, because once they do that, everything else is easier for them. So being in exile, I think the first responsibility is to keep hope, to continue to move forward, to figure out ways to support the movement internally, to speak out in a way that people cannot speak out internally, and to continue. Until when? Until we have freedom. I mean, there is no alternative. There is only one path. The path is to move forward and to make sure that we win with freedom and democracy.
And Venezuelans, I think, really demonstrated the bravery of internal activists in that election, because the reason we know that Maduro lost that election by a landslide was because of brave opposition activists who went and collected the ballot total papers from enough precincts around the country and got that information out to the international community that we could all do the math. So that was an incredible collaboration between internal and external activists, right? And of course, the lesson the Maduro regime took from that was we need to double down on the repression.
And if they double down on repression, we need to double down on purpose. There's just no way around it.
There's no way around it. Thank you. So all of you, in different ways, have dealt with one of the most disturbing, growing trends in behavior by autocratic regimes, which is reaching the arm of repression across borders, transnational repression. Jeffrey, I want to come to you on this. You are here in place of Ana Kwok, whose father and brother have now been detained by the Chinese regime in retaliation for her activism. And this is a common tactic by the Chinese and by others. It is one form of transnational repression. We also have the use of technological tools, spyware, and other ways of getting at activists beyond borders, and physical threats as well. So, Jeffrey, can you talk a bit about what you think we global democracy supporters should be doing when we see autocratic governments taking these kinds of steps?
Yeah, I mean, I have to start by acknowledging, obviously, this time 2 weeks ago, I thought I was going to be one of the people, in the audience, and Anna was supposed to be here, and the news just came that, as you said, her brother and her father were arrested. Her brother was released on bail. And as we speak now on this stage, her father continues to be behind bars because the bail was denied. And you're right. I mean, this is such a common tactic by the Chinese government. But I also do want to emphasize that this is a brand new level of escalation with respect to Hong Kong. Up until about 2 weeks ago, no exiled or overseas Hong Kong activist has ever had a family member arrested and actually facing prosecution. I mean, they have been interrogated and detained, but not to this level. So even as we continue to move forward, what we're seeing is that the escalation against activists in Hong Kong, in terms of that transnational repression, and that's just one aspect of it. My colleague, Carmen Lau, who, like Anna Kwok, also has a 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty on her head. She now lives in England, and her neighbors in the area that she lives in Maidenhead, has been receiving anonymous letters with her photograph, with her address, and basically, if you see this person in your neighborhood, send her to the Chinese embassy. So this is the lived reality, of people I work with and my friends every single day. And so I think there is a serious need for democratic governments around the world to tackle transnational repression. And that begins with defining what transnational repression is. Because those of us in the advocacy space, we've been talking about transnational repression issues for a few years now. But there's actually oftentimes a lack of the legal infrastructure in terms of dealing with this. So in the US, if you have cases of transnational repression, sometimes you see individuals being prosecuted under, spying laws or infiltration or other forms of, local laws. But there's a lack of infrastructure, legal infrastructure with respect to that. There's a lack of understanding, especially among local law enforcement, in terms of how do you identify the transnational aspects. If you have two groups of people, you have a pro-Beijing group of protesters here, anti-Beijing group of protesters here, how do you know what's happening, right? So there's a need for training as well. And then coordination, which is why an occasion like this is so important for democracy-loving policymakers and individuals, activists like us, to get together, because I think sometimes these alliances, as you know very well, they need to be strengthened. And if there's more information sharing, that's always helpful. As we speak, I'll say one more thing. There are plans for the Chinese government to move to a larger site in terms of this embassy in London, in the UK. The Labour government right now is reviewing whether they'll approve it. I've been part of thousands of people who've protested against that idea, because if the Chinese build the largest embassy in Europe, in the UK, it will be a massive spying operation and intelligence gathering operation. It will threaten activists and dissidents. So we've been trying to protest against that. So there are concrete issues for sure in terms of the context, but overall the big picture is that we need to define the term and we need to work together.
So what I hear you saying is that part of defending our own democratic societies is keeping our societies safe for exiled dissidents like yourselves.
Yeah.
I think also of Jamal Khashoggi, who was a friend of mine and probably of many people in this room, who was murdered by the Saudi government in Turkey. And that was met with impunity, which sent a signal to other governments around the world that this stuff was okay. Corinne, you were subjected to Pegasus spyware on your phone, right? Tell me a little bit about how that affected you.
Yes, so first, there is this misunderstanding in democracies. When we talk about authoritarian regimes, we talk about them as a local or regional issue. It's happening over there. But the reality is that repression goes far beyond the borders. They use economic influence, they use diplomacy, They use spyware technology. They even use international institutions to silence critics, to intimidate dissidents. And in my case, they used almost all of this, but one of the most frightening was the Pegasus spyware. So even if I was not an activist, imagine you are with your phone in your living room, and you're speaking with your family, friends, and all of a sudden, someone 7,000 kilometers away accesses your microphone and listens to everything you are talking about in your living room. They access your camera and watch you without you knowing. They watch everyone around you. They look at your GPS. They read and know exactly where you are located. They read your emails. They know everything you're doing. Even as a person who wouldn't be an activist, it's frightening. As an activist, it's even worse because we know that these regimes are anticipating our actions. They're anticipating our advocacy. They are destroying trust in the community, which means some people would come to my house and were like, I don't think I can talk to you. Can we leave your phone outside? Or we go outside, we leave your phone inside. So the fact that even our efforts to mobilize, to advocate, to speak out was destroyed. The trust among us was destroyed because of this invasion of privacy, because of this attack, this weapon being utilized against us. So yes, the spyware technology being utilized by authoritarian regime to intimidate and silence critics is a real thing, and we need policy, we need regulations, but also we need accountability for the way that they're being utilized internationally, and ensure that to limit who and how they can access this type of technology.
Let me give you two examples. Masih Alinejad, who is an activist from Iran. She is now a U.S. citizen. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. And 2 years ago, we were on a Zoom call. Somebody knocks her door. She decided not to go to answer. And it happened that the man at the door was a member of the Russian MAP from Azerbaijan, was knocking at her door with an AK-47, and he was detained. He was detained, and that cell was investigated, and it went to trial. That trial ended a month and a half ago, and it showed that not only the transnational repression, but it also showed the articulation, the organization, the coordination between different regimes. So this was a hit, an assassination attempt ordered by the Iranian regime that contracted the Russian mob that also subcontracted people to send her to Venezuela and then take her back to Iran. Since they were not able to do that, they sent somebody to kill her. It's all on the news. It happened. It's real. It happened in U.S. soil. Let me give you another example. Teniente Ojeda, a Venezuelan military officer, he was in prison. I knew him. We were in prison together in Venezuela in a military prison. He left Venezuela. He went to Chile, Santiago de Chile, and he continued with his advocacy. And the Maduro regime sent a hit squad. They abducted him, and then they disappeared him. He appeared 2 weeks after that with his body completely chopped, of course, killed, and the Chilean authorities identified that the murders were sent directly by the Maduro regime. So these are two examples, very concrete, that this is real. This is happening today. These regimes are sending people using spyware, using intimidation tactics to the families of the activists inside their countries, and even sending death squads to kill people beyond their borders.
Thank you. Corinne, Leopoldo, you're both here representing your own national struggles, but also representing the World Liberty Congress, which is a relatively new addition to our community of democracy supporters, but it is very different. I represent an American organization, right? You represent an organization that is made up of activists from all around the world. Can you tell us a bit about what makes WLC different?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. The World Liberty Congress is the largest alliance of pro-democracy leaders from authoritarian countries who are at the front lines, fighting for democratic change within their countries. Many of them end up being political prisoners. Many of them are journalists, or end up being in exile or in country, leading the fight every single day. And one of the reasons we came together was the understanding that if Putin and Maduro in Venezuela are working together, if Museveni of Uganda and Kagame of Rwanda are working together, then we as activists from these autocratic countries should come together and support each other in these efforts, learn from each other, and create a network to fight, to stand up together and fight back. And so this is the essence of our organization, this alliance to bring our forces together to stand up against autocratic regimes.
Solidarity in action. Leopoldo, anything you want to add?
Yes, as we said before, and Karine just mentioned, it's very clear that autocrats work together in many different ways. You can see that in their diplomatic efforts, in their military efforts, in the way they share technology, in the way they build their kleptocratic networks to steal the resources of the people. So it's very clear that this is an ongoing, very profound network of autocrats, that it's non-ideological. And this is very important. You have the communists from China, the nationalists from Russia, the theocrats from Iran, the kleptocrats from Venezuela, all working together, not along ideological lines. On the democratic side, what we saw and experienced is that there was a lack of coordination. We didn't know each other. We didn't even know or worked with our neighbors from Nicaragua or Cuba, much less from Rwanda or Hong Kong or Russia or Iran. And in the experience of being in exile, your first question, started to meet other people and started to realize that it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Muslim, Christian, if you are from Africa, Eastern Europe, or Latin America. When you talk about what it means to fight an autocratic regime, it's the same fight. It's like going to a football field. It's the same fight. It's the same struggle. So we decided to create an alliance of democracy defenders, freedom fighters, to enhance the understanding of the adversary, to enhance the possibilities of working together, to learn from each other, and to create a network, a multi-layered network of collaboration. We strongly believe that if we don't create a global movement for freedom and democracy, much in the same way that in the 1980s, 90s, the climate change movement started, and this is a multi-layered movement that has activists on one layer, organizations, governments, media, philanthropists, different layers that can connect with a common purpose: freedom, democracy, human rights. And that's the essence of the World Liberty Congress. And I would like to invite all of you to Berlin in November in the context of the fall of the wall. We're going to celebrate with the city of Berlin, Berlin Freedom Week, and we're going to have our Congress. We will have delegates that will be elected, because this is something key that we do at the World Liberty Congress. We practice democracy to fight against autocracy. So in our movement that is global, it has hundreds of members, we elected the delegates from each one of the countries. We elect our leadership council, our executive council, and it's open. It's open to anyone who wants to participate at many different levels. If you're interested, please reach out, and everybody's welcome. This is a fight that requires the engagement of everyone. Nobody that wants to fight for freedom should be left out of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we were chatting yesterday, Leopoldo, and you made the point that whether you were running for mayor or running a democracy movement in exile, you knew that you couldn't persuade people by focusing on what's wrong, on grievances, on pessimism, that you persuade people by offering them a vision of the future. Let's be honest, the reality that all of you are living with is a tough one. So I want to just, in our last couple minutes, do a quick round and ask each of you, what gives you that hope for the future? And Jeffrey, let me start with you.
Yeah, I mean, me as the historian, me would like to look back. I mean, I don't have the perfect answer for the present or the future. But I will say, since we were talking about the fall of the Berlin Wall, the book that won the Pulitzer Prize for General Fiction this year is To the Success of a Hopeless Cause, Princeton University Press, and it's about Soviet dissidents. And as late as 1985, 86, it wasn't evident, it wasn't clear that the Berlin Wall was going to come down, the Soviet Union was going to collapse. But a lot of these people kept fighting. And the other example that I'll give is the story of Taiwan. Again, 86, even 87, if you had asked an observer, was China or was Taiwan the freer of the two, they would have said probably China, right? This was after Mao, this was reform opening up. This was before the Tiananmen Square massacre, while Taiwan was still under martial law. And yet, the Taiwanese student movement for democracy quickly building up, and then Taiwan held its first democratic election in 1996. And we heard from Tsai Ing-wen, who's obviously a political hero of mine yesterday, all of us did. And so the success of Taiwan is another source of hope. And if we fight with our allies, if we reference their successes, I think that gives you hope.
Thank you. Leopoldo.
Well, for me, I think all of these references, of course, but for me, the people in Venezuela give me hope. The people in every country that are going under autocratic regimes give me hope, because it's very common for people to think that when you talk about Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Rwanda, that the people in those countries are like the dictators that are holding on to power. And the fact is that the immense majority of the people from these countries want to be free. And for me, that's the main source of hope. My friends who are now in prison, we have hundreds of people who are in prison, not just in Venezuela, but beyond. And if you're engaged in this, you need to view a promised land. If you don't have the capacity to view the promised land, there is no way you're going to be successful in this business of fighting for freedom and democracy, because that's the one thing that can give you hope, to know that things can change, to know that it can take 40 years or it can take longer, but that the promised land exists, that if you work hard enough, if you're consistent, if you have a clear purpose, you will get there. And as we were talking yesterday, I see a lot of the conversation around democracy these days being very pessimistic, and a lot of people just lamenting and being pessimistic. Yes, there's a lot of wrongdoing in the world right now. There are a lot of challenges, but if we don't project the possibility of succeeding, of being free, and projecting a world, nations that are fully free, fully respectful of human rights, fully flourishing with democracy, we won't be able to mobilize people. Mobilization of people requires hope, and dictatorships know this. That's why they want to break hope of individuals and of movements.
Thank you. Corinne.
So when my father was in prison, we had to convince a lot of people about the reality of the dictatorship in Rwanda. Many people were convinced that it was a democracy, that everything was going well in the country. And in fact, this propaganda, this very powerful Rwandan propaganda machine successfully convinced people that everything is fine, that there is no issues in the country, when in fact the people are repressed and human rights are abused systematically. But as we were advocating for his release, and I met so many people around the world who didn't know him, who didn't know me, and yet they heard the injustice he was facing. They heard the torture that he was undergoing in the prison. They heard the way that others in the same conditions as him were being treated, and they just decided to help. They came to our support. They used their voices to support these efforts for his release and the release of other political prisoners. So what gave me hope is realizing that people have the ability to care and to act and to join the fight because they see the injustice, and they can use their voices too. And as I sit here, I have a little baby girl kicking inside my belly. And now, as we continue this fight, and the realization that we have so many people who are continuing every single day to sacrifice their lives and to speak up for freedom, justice, and for dignity, I hope that she will grow up in a world where she doesn't have to be afraid for her life, that she can speak up, move freely, and live without the fear of violence or repression.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, role models, empathy, hope. Please join me in thanking this incredible panel. Thank you.